Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Connect Africa. So, first of all, I'm very sorry that for the delay. Really, we have some technical problem, and some of our speakers had unexpected situations. So, yeah, we have to wait for them. So today we are here to reflect on the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's speech today on the at the opening of the AU 35th Ordinary AU Summit or Assembly, which I find it very a Pan-African speech. So we have here Pan-Africa, it's a Pan-African media platform. We have here Pan-African guests from various professions, various places, and we are here to reflect exactly on that speech line by line. I will quickly introduce my guests here. Kwame Gonza, he is, you know, he's a friend of this show. He's a Pan-Africanist. He's director, media and publication at the Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute. We are here also Brother Lansana Fofana, or rather, he's known as K-Spop in his social media. He's a Senegalese activist based in France. Basically, what he does is creating awareness that actually France is still colonizing its previous colonies in Africa. And we have here also, for the first time, but she's no stranger for the show. She's a great supporter of Connect Africa, Sister Beiti Shiba Tekeste. She's Ethiopian American, Pan-African activist. She's owner and founder of Push Start Media, and a founding member of ET Hub, which is an organization that its main mission is to be a central hub for all pro-Ethiopians advocacy. She also collaborates with Get Fact ET, it's an Ethiopian organization, and Abran and many other organizations, and Connect Africa is one of them. And Sister Choice of Fumo Okoro, we might not see her, but she will join us, so I will introduce her when she joins us. So quickly, we have here Brother Lansana. He has to join another session, and we have delayed him, and we ourselves were late. So he will quickly reflect on the speech of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, and specifically, I want to throw this question to him. The Prime Minister has raised several issues, and one of them was the peace and security. Despite the unions or the African Union commitment to secure peace and security in the continent, but still, many of the countries there are emerging conflicts in the continent, endangering the sovereignty of member states in the continent. So how do you, and we have now in Western Africa various coups d'etats, and a lot of things are going on in Africa. What's your take on this generally, on the speech, and with what is going on in West Africa, because your activism has a direct relation with that?
Oh, can I respond in English or in French? Sorry.
You can do it in French so that we can include French speakers.
Okay. So merci beaucoup pour cette invitation. Je remercie toutes les personnes qui sont présentes pendant ce direct-là. Et je remercie Connect Africa et la chaîne panafricaine. Alors, j'ai beaucoup apprécié le discours du Premier ministre parce qu'il a insisté sur le fait que l'Afrique devrait avoir des sièges au Conseil de sécurité de l'ONU. Et c'est quelque chose qui est impératif. L'Afrique devrait vraiment avoir un siège au Conseil de sécurité de l'ONU pour que la voix de l'Afrique soit entendue, pour que les Africains puissent prendre des décisions pour les Africains et qu'on cesse de prendre des décisions pour les Africains à la place des Africains et parfois contre les Africains. Donc, je pense que c'est quelque chose qui est très, très important. Le plan de la sécurité, ce sont les Africains qui doivent eux-mêmes s'organiser pour assurer leur propre sécurité. Les bases militaires étrangères ne sont pas des solutions. Les bases militaires américaines ne sont pas des solutions. Les bases militaires françaises non plus ne sont pas des solutions. Ce sont les Africains qui doivent s'organiser pour trouver des réponses face à leurs différents problèmes. Le problème de sécurité, le problème des coups d'État, tout cela doit être réglé par des organisations africaines fortes et non par l'Union européenne ou par d'autres organisations qui viennent se substituer aux organisations sous-régionales. Donc, j'ai beaucoup apprécié son discours. Il a parlé aussi de la question de la nature, la question de planter des arbres. Il a parlé de l'agriculture qui puisse aider les Africains à devenir indépendants. Donc, sur tous ces plans-là, il a beaucoup insisté sur l'autodétermination des Africains. Et nous, en tant que panafricains, on se bat pour cela. En tant que panafricains, c'est ce que nous prenons dans notre discours. Donc, il a fait un discours typiquement panafricain que tous les panafricains saluent. Et j'espère que les autres frères africains présents avec lui vont sérieusement réfléchir sur les questions qu'il a eu à traiter, sur les questions qu'il a eu à aborder, parce qu'à travers ces questions, il y a beaucoup de problèmes qui puissent être réglés par les Africains. So, sister, it's what I think in French about his speech. So it is something very important for me to explain here. And I thank you for the opportunity you're giving to me tonight.
Sorry? the part only you commented, the AU and what's going on in West Africa in terms of peace and security. You can say that in English, it should be nice, not the whole speech.
Yeah. So what I say is that I really appreciate his talk because Africa needs to take in charge its security. So it is not AU that will solve African security problem. So it is a regional organization that have to seriously think about it and to take the solution that is proper to our reality. So I think if there is coup d'etat in Africa, it is because there are many persons that have been elected that are not the choice of African people. So Africa is being judged by organizations like Nations Unies. I don't know how do you say Nations Unies, sorry. So it is this organization where Africa is missing, is this organization that are taking many condemnations for African countries. So Africa needs to have persons that will represent our country in these organizations. So it's very important for Africans to have 3 or 5 permanent persons that will stay in this organization, or non-permanent person that will represent Africa in this organization of Nations Unies. Yes.
Thank you, Brother Lansana. Thank you for your reflection, for your view, to share this with us. Thank you very much for your time as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So next, we have here, okay, Sister Choice, which is good. Welcome, Sister Choice.
Mallet?
Yeah, we are live, Sister Choice.
Okay, can I come in?
Yes, you are in already. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I thank you very much, my brother, for what you said, and thank you, Mallet, for this great opportunity. I think what is happening is really a relief for me. I think Abiy Ahmed, I've never shied away from how much I appreciate him, his leadership. I worked in Ethiopia and saw him transit into his leadership role. And every action he took just was music to my ear. It just made me proud to be African with him. And I think what's happening, what I liked about Abiy Ahmed is that he looked within the continent. He focused very much on regional support. And that is what Africa has lacked for many years. There was this expectation for over 50 years that you reach out to Europe, your former colonizers, for support. Abiy Ahmed came in and he focused on strengthening the regional system dynamics. And that is reflected in the speech you mentioned, Mallet. The speech that it talks about, because eventually that's what's going to save Africa. We cannot, we know That is, looking externally outside the continent is not going to work. It has failed us for many years. And I think what Abiy Ahmed brings in, and the Kagames, the Abiy Ahmed, is that they are focusing on not just national strength, but they're looking at regional, leveraging the regional place to build up Africa. And that's what I found very, very hopeful about his speech. It's a Pan-Africanism is actually being lived and becoming active through some leaders we have. And that's where the hope lies. So I was really excited. Thank you for this, Marlet. I was really excited to hear him speak. But I'm not surprised. I've always been impressed by that man. And but he's looking into regional dynamics, regional strength, leveraging regional solidarity, because that's what's happening around the world. The EU, you look at the EU and all that. So I'm glad. I was really excited about his speech. I was. Over.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Sister Choice. Actually, I didn't want to let you speak without introducing you, but I didn't also want to stop you. Just Sister Choice Ofomo Okoro is actually, she's a head UN office for the coordination of humanitarian affairs, or rather known as UN OCHA in Pakistan, but her views here are personal. She have shared a lot of issues, what she think about the international organization presence in Africa before. We have the videos here, but since you started to speak, I want to ask you specifically from the speech that he raised a couple of times. Actually, he stressed on food security and self-sufficiency, and not to rely on charity and external aid. And this is a subject that you are so passionate, working for your UN for decades. And what is your take on that? Please, share your view with us.
Sorry for it's for me.
Yeah, it's for you.
Yes. I mean, it's amazing that when we hear security in Africa these days, we have to take it with we have to be strategic about it. Isn't it amazing that I'm in Dar es Salaam right now, and I was in Addis Ababa before. I'm taking my son on a tour. Is half Canadian, on a tour to see Africa, how powerful and secured Africa is. There's a lot of language that is dumped on this continent that holds us back. The assumption that security is somewhere else, but it's not in Africa, is not true. There is some element of insecurity, and I've said it many times that sometimes the humanitarian language is used to stop African leaders from doing what they need to do to secure their citizens. It's like it's. I say it, for example, it's amazing how criminal groups can become non-state actors very easily when it comes to Africa. It's in the naming and the branding. So you have a criminal group. If it's in the United States, they are termed criminals. But if it's in Africa, it's called non-state actors, or or it's called low-intensity conflict. It's giving some names that legitimizes it sometimes, and that can hold back the leaders from putting in place law enforcement to secure the lives of their people. And I think that's what Africa is dealing with right now. There's in West Africa, we know what is happening in Burkina Faso, what's happening in Mali, Nigeria, the northeast of Nigeria, Cameroon. Isn't it amazing how insecurity is just flowing through? It's connected through the countries, and what are leaders doing about it? So it's we look at security, and when I look at security, I connect it with sovereignty. Security and sovereignty, and the right of a country to act within its sovereign boundaries. It's if some things happen in the West, it's addressed within sovereignty. It's not challenged. But many African countries are almost being ambushed from taking action they should take within their sovereign borders to secure the lives and well-being of their citizens. And that is growing, and it's something we don't want to look at very, very much. The African Union is trying very hard, but I'm wondering who is funding the African Union right now, because that determines its ability to do what it needs to do. It depends. It has to be funded. Africans have to fund it for it to be an entity that can act. You know, act for the continent. I don't know. So I'm not going to judge that. But security in the continent, I believe that the leaders in the continent, their hands they are being bamboozled from doing what they need to do. That's what that
If I add on to Sister Choice, security in terms of food security and self-sufficiency, that's also what he raised in his speech: food security in the continent and self-sufficiency. He underlined those things, and to be free from external aid. And I know that your experience is related to that. What is your take? African countries being securing food and also being self-sufficient, not to be reliant on charity or external aid.
I mean, they talk about, Abiy Ahmed talks about self-sufficiency, but Ethiopia is one of the 16 countries that are going to appeal for aid, for humanitarian assistance in Europe and around the world. So I respect that man. I think he's trying very hard. But Africans have to practicalize, self-sufficiency too. It's you can talk about it, but we have to reflect on the actions we take as a continent, as countries in this continent, how we are seen, perceived globally. I believe in perception and optics, and optics. So if because some African countries go out there to appeal for humanitarian assistance, but it's food aid, and food aid is not necessarily in cash. It's just wheat or sorghum brought in from the United States. So these are some actions we take. So it contradicts what we say. And self-sufficiency, it means basically optics as well. What do you appear to say? So what you say does not contradict what you do. So you say one thing, and so that's the part of the challenge as well. Yeah, that's part of the challenge. We have to just watch. I work, like you mentioned, in this field. It's not easy. I speak out, and it's a critical challenge for me in terms of even my job security, but I continue to do it because I think African countries some countries don't understand the implication of saying you're pursuing self-sufficiency, but you are quite comfortable with allowing sorghum to be dumped in your country, even when your citizens don't use sorghum. Those are some of the challenges we face. Over.
Thank you, Sister Choice. Coming now to Brother Kwame Gonza. If we look at the Prime Minister opening speech this morning at the AU, from the look of it, it's a very good Pan-African speech, and he raised so many issues in that speech. And in a scale of 10, how do you rate the Prime Minister speech at the AU summit, and also particularly the Africa? He says, we want a prosperous African-based or sustainable and equitable development. What do you think about this statement and the practicality of it?
Yeah, thank you, Malet. First of all, I would like to thank our viewers who are supporting Connect Africa, in all kind of ways, and those ones who are watching and subscribing and liking and sharing. Those ones who are watching and not sharing, they should do so. Those ones who are watching and not subscribing, you should subscribe so that we can keep bringing you this information that is happening around our continent and the African people all around the world. Now, when I came across the Prime Minister's speech, I really was very, very excited, and I was very, very happy and elated. You remember when I reached out to you and I said, the way this man is speaking is really, you know, very encouraging. Like for a very long time, Africans have looked for a leader who will assert himself, because our dignity on the international stage looks like it has been undermined for a very long time. We are called poor, we are called diseased, you know, like how you have seen in the international media. In the international media, like even in the speech, he tried to address it that Africa is looked at as a, you know, the narrative that is being painted out there as is poor, is corrupt, and all these things. Yet Africa has never invaded any continent, you know, to go and exploit its resources. So you wonder where these guys get this, you know, this narrative that they paint on Africa. Now, on the scale of 10, I would rate that speech. I would rate it around 9, 8.5 or 9. Reason being, because he tried to address all things. He spoke about COVID from the onset when he was opening. He addressed the problems in Ethiopia. He thanked the presidents who have supported Ethiopia in this difficult time. And he went on to address, because we have been having this anxiety within the Pan-African world that why is he making certain moves which we don't understand. So he tried to address that part whereby he's been reaching out to Tigray and you know, extending a hand, trying to solve the issue with the Tigray rebels. So we didn't feel very good, but he was able to address that issue, and he went ahead to emphasize how it is important for us to stand together as Africans in combating the false narrative that is being painted out there. We should, to the extent that he even proposed that we should establish a Pan-African or African Union media house, we should be able, which should be able to revitalize or put out a counter narrative, you know, to these negative narratives that are coming from outside the continent, especially from the Western world that has been painting Africa as a bad place, but at the same time, they don't want to leave. They paint the continent as a bad place, but they don't want to leave us alone, like what we are seeing in Ethiopia. The United Nations is insisting that it must be there. We have people who have problems, like in Yemen. You know, Yemen people are facing a lot of hunger and problems in Palestine, but they insist that they should stay in Africa. So there must be a reason why these Western people, they want to stay in Africa. So he addressed that part of the problem of incursion into Africa by these people, and then he emphasized that point that we should stand together. And then he looked back into history and saw that we need also to look at the dream, the Pan-African dream, the dream of our forefathers, and then implement that dream so that we can build a new Africa. And then he spoke about the Pan-African Renaissance. So he looked forward. He did not only look back, but he looked forward again. And he spoke about the Pan-African Renaissance. We should use the Pan-African ideas to build a new Africa. Okay, we should go forward and build a new Africa on African ideas. And he again emphasized around the end of the speech, the idea of African solutions to African problems, which he has very, very, very well from the beginning spoken about when Egypt was going to the United Nations, to report Ethiopia on the issue of the Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam. Prime Minister Abiy was in East Africa trying to find a solution in Africa, and emphasizing that the UN and the United States, they should not interfere in this problem, and they don't have a stake in this issue. And he emphasized that African Union should be able to solve this problem. So this was his emphasis. So he backed that up with action by being in the region. While Egypt was in the United States and the UN, he was in Uganda, he was in Kenya, he was in Rwanda, he was in DRC Congo, trying to get support here. And lo and behold, these countries solved. They were able to support him and buy him a time so that he can be able to solve these problems, because they believed in him. And we can see this, that even President Kenyatta emphasized it when Senator Blinken was trying to come to Kenya, trying to convince them, to act in a certain way. And President Kenyatta said, no, the problem has to be solved from inside. We will not allow external interference. So I think that this speech is very encouraging. And for us as Pan-Africanists, it's very exciting, because we see a new Africa. We see the dawn of a new Africa. We see someone who is now trying to assert and bring back that dignity of the African people. That's where he mentioned about how we Africans are a proud people because of the sacrifices. We are standing on the foundation of the sacrifices that were made by our forefathers and foremothers who sacrificed to liberate this continent. So we are a proud people. So he tries to bring us back to this level whereby our dignity has been so much undermined, but he tries to show that we are still a proud people with a lot of history, and we are very resilient people. So this is how I see the speech on the onset. It is really interesting and encouraging and forward-looking, using the history that belongs to us as Africans and as a people.
Thank you, Brother Kwame Gonza, for sharing that with us. Last but not least, welcome again, Sister. We call her Shiba, but her full name is, of course, Betty Shiba. Okay. In his speech, first of all, you give us, you share with us, what do you think about this speech? Give us like a summary. What do you think as an Ethiopian American and a Pan-African as well? How do you see his speech? And also in terms of, directly related to Ethiopia, he said, Ethiopia shall leave no stone unturned in search of peace for our country. There are recent developments that happened in the beginning of this year, which is release of as he calls them, high-profile suspects to create a conducive environment for peace in the country, and also different, unilateral actions, including the unilateral withdrawal of Ethiopian National Defense Force some time ago. How do you see this? We are still in war, and then to do this and to sort of kind of extending this olive branch for a peace, but still in the northern part there is war going on, and also if you can share with us, this is as an Ethiopian always I find it difficult, and I think I see it also in the Prime Minister, internally so divided the country and struggling to unite the country, and at the same time to be a Pan-African. How can we get that balance individually and also, from the prime minister point of view? He's a Pan-African from his action, sticking to African solution to African problems, but also internally having all these problems.
Yes, thank you, Mahlet. Well, thank you first for inviting me to this program, and thank you to all your speakers as well for enlightening us with their perspective. I think it's very interesting, and it's much needed that we have forums like this to discuss our affairs in Africa, and the Prime Minister's speech, as well as a lot of our Pan-African media houses, such as Connect Africa, have been pushing for putting our stories in front and our stories told, from our people. So I think it's very important. Going to the Prime Minister's speech today, I have various reflections on it. I think from a Pan-African view, or from addressing Africans and African leaders, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed hit on some very important things outside of just the peace and security. He mentioned the reforestation programs and the growth and development initiatives and forward moving things that are relevant and very important to note. When in regards to the attempts by the the Ethiopian government, numerous times through this conflict that's now 15 months and going, it's very important that the world recognizes that the Ethiopian government and the Ethiopian people have made lots of attempts to stop the conflict by peaceful means, such as the unilateral ceasefire that happened back in June. That did not deter the aggressors. In fact, it reinvigorated and expanded the war efforts throughout the rest of the year, causing numerous destruction, numerous deaths, and a continuing attempts to destabilize Ethiopia, which impacts not just the geopolitical areas outside in the Horn, but the rest of Africa. And so Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed made sure that was clearly noted, as well as now with the new attempts to make peace negotiations. You mentioned the release of leaders of the TPLF and amongst other dissidents in the attempt to extend an olive branch, and also that the Ethiopian armed forces did not enter the Tigray region, whilst having pushed the TPLF forces back into the Tigray proper, which caused a lot of issues and contradictions and people just being frustrated within the country about why these things weren't being done to their satisfaction, to have justice for all the things done. However, it's very important to note how difficult it is in dealing with trying to unite an ethnically divided and conflict-ridden nation at a time when, as the Prime Minister pointed out, you have external factors that are directly compromising the attempts and the efforts by the government to control the internal affairs, to control the internal conflicts, and to thereby, unite the people. What I think is very troubling at this point is that while there is still conflict and areas in Afar specifically and other northern Amhara regions are still being attacked by the forces, by the TPLF, and it's been reported, there's now still ongoing rhetoric and calls in international media that the Ethiopian government is hindering access to humanitarian aid for famine-ridden areas, which is a big concern to all Ethiopians. We want the peace, we want the people in Tigray to have access to the aid and to the rehabilitation efforts that are now starting in other regions. But we have still a war-torn area and people dying, and it's been incredibly hard to contain all of that, as well as maintain peace and play along with the U.S. and other international bodies that are putting pressure, incredible amount of pressure on the government to pursue peaceful negotiations. And so when he says, we will leave no stones unturned, we have to keep in mind the unilateral ceasefire, the Ethiopian government, stopping the armed forces from entering into Tigray to pursue the enemy and cause even more harm to the civilian population. We're talking about UN and WFP and other aid organizations trying to make attempts to go into Tigray to provide the aid and the relief, but the same corridor of transport and access into Tigray is constantly under conflict since the beginning of this year, and you have more people dying. So it's extremely frustrating. It's extremely it's extremely difficult to even try to unite the people while people are still suffering. But I think it's very important for the people, not just in Ethiopia, but in Africa, to realize sometimes that we have leaders who may be making the attempts and to play along with with international requirements and suffering because of constant pressure from the outside. And Sister Okora mentioned earlier, and I think it was a very important fact, that while we are, as Pan-Africans, pushing for self-sustainment, Ethiopia being one of the 16 countries appealing for humanitarian aid, and furthermore, the majority of the economy, I would say over 50-something% of Ethiopia's economy is still reliant on international aid as well as U.S. programs. We have this thing called leverage that we are constantly compromising in making our demands. So I'll say that, but as well, he also mentioned about the lack of presence. And we are undermined as African nations in the UN as a representation in the Security Council. He called for the AU to push for the 2 permanent seats and 5 non-permanent seats to be established. Africans need to push and demand that we have representation, because we cannot have African solutions for African problems if we're constantly being undermined and forced into certain mechanisms to restore peace by international bodies who not only have power and influence but have economic leverage over the nations that they make these demands of. Back to you, Malet.
Thank you, Sister Eva. Yeah, okay. Let me come back to Brother Kwame Gonza regarding, the political unity that he mentioned, and I quote, "We want a politically united continent that aspires to fulfill the idea of an African Renaissance." Most of the people really do not know. I mean, there's an African Union. Certainly, there's some kind of union in the government of African governments, but it's not politically. What are the advantages, the disadvantages that we have by not the leaders politically united in the continent, and what will that bring? Is that possible at all? And if it happens, what will it mean to Africa?
Thank you, Malet. I just want to rephrase what he said. He said we want a politically united continent that aspires to fulfill the ideas of Pan-Africanism and the vision of an African Renaissance or Renaissance. So to answer your question, I think in this he's trying to reflect on the things which Dr. Kwame Nkrumah was mentioning. For example, if I may be precise, there's a speech which Dr. Kwame Nkrumah gave in 1963 in Addis Ababa at the formation of the Organization of African Unity. And he appealed to the heads of state at that time. There was 32 heads of state during that time. And Dr. Kwame Nkrumah appealed to them to form a union government during that time. Unfortunately, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah did not succeed. There is a tendency for us to be caught up in the details of what is happening around the continent. I'll give an example, like what you mentioned, that we have divisions in the various countries. When we have these divisions in the various countries, like tribalism, all over the continent, is a huge problem all over the continent. We have these external forces that they take advantage of these divisions, and then they exacerbate these problems, and we ourselves get focused on these problems to the extent that we don't see the bigger picture. Now, Kwame Nkrumah, what he was doing in 1963, he was trying to change people's minds, or to offset that inward looking which we were doing during that period in the 1960s, and saying we have so many tribes, we can't unite, we have 60 tribes, oh, let us do it small, small. He was trying to point out for us that as long as we want to look inside and we fear to unify so that we can take responsibility of the continent and take control of the whole continent, then these problems will continue to persist. Why? Because the external forces, like what we are seeing in Ethiopia, will continue, to emphasize and play on these differences. They will play on these issues, this tribalism, these small differences which we have, and then they will get what they want. And that is what we are seeing, that these countries which have been powerful for a very long time, they don't want to deal with a unified Africa, because a unified Africa will demand what is due it. A unified Africa will demand what it deserves in respect, in dignity, in trade, and it will stop definitely the exploitation of its resources. So this is what Kwame Nkrumah was pointing us to in the 1960s, or precisely 1963, when he appealed to his colleagues or his contemporaries for them to be able to look at the idea of a united Africa. Now, I think that Prime Minister Abiy, he's just re-echoing this when he speaks about unifying Africa using Pan-African ideals. So we have to understand what are the Pan-African ideals themselves. When we are talking about Pan-Africanism, we are talking about a unified continent, politically, single government. We are talking about a single foreign policy. We are talking about at the United Nations, for example, we should have a single seat which represents all Africans, not 55 seats that are insignificant, that even when our heads of state are speaking at the United Nations, they are not respected. You find that the whole room is empty when an African leaders, each of them, the 55 heads of state, when they are speaking, each of them, the room is empty. They are speaking to empty chairs, and this is how we are disrespected at the African Union. So he's trying to point out and re-echo Nkrumah's call that we need, or we want, a politically united continent that aspires to feel the ideas of Pan-Africanism, unified in every sense. In defense, we are seeing what is happening all over the continent, that ever since they took out Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, who was pushing very much for a unified continent, the Sahel was opened up to the extent that the ISIS and other jihadists crossed from the Middle East all the way, to Libya. Now weapons are pouring into Libya from Libya. Those weapons, they come all the way to the Sahel, Niger, Mali. Burkina Faso, up to Burkina Faso. Now, those jihadists have crossed all the way to Mozambique. So we never thought that they would. So this is what a united Africa will bring us. It will bring us that defense, unified military force. When we have a unified military force, we can take care of these problems. We can take care of problems like the TPLF. It would not have been there. It would not have been there. But because our enemy is playing on this, is using this and empowering the people who are fighting against a democratically elected government. And if it was not for the other African countries to come in and support Ethiopia in the regional countries, by now the government would have collapsed. And the Prime Minister actually made it very clear, and he mentioned it, that if it was not for our African brothers and sisters, the existence of Ethiopia as a nation would have been in great danger. I think we have to take the words of these leaders when they are speaking seriously, and weigh the words very, very well, and give them put them in correct context in which they are speaking them. So the speech was very, very rich, and it is important for us to take it seriously. The African people have been able to support him, and we need to continue in that direction. And we need to trust, we need to give him a benefit of a doubt, and to trust him that he loves the country and he doesn't want the country to break up. And in this direction, I think that we as African people, if we continue to rally him and we empower him, and emphasize also the idea of Pan-Africanism and a unified government, and rally behind him, I think he has the potential as a young leader, compared to other African heads of state. When you look around right now, or the continent, others 77, we have 76, and 90 years. Even when we go to Cameroon, for example, is ridiculous. So he has a vision. He spoke about the Pan-African Renaissance, for example. This is the future. This is someone who's looking at the future. We want the Africa which is united politically under the ideals of Pan-Africanism, like we said, unified foreign policy, unified military on the continent, a single government, single government to represent all Africans. So that means we do not need foreign military bases on the continent, like what we've seen a couple of days ago, that the United States is trying to establish another military base in Ethiopia, in Somalia, sorry. And yet it already has a military base in Djibouti. So you wonder what is the use of the military base which it wants to establish in Ethiopia when it already has a military base just close here in Djibouti. So these problems of military bases and countries like France misbehaving all over the continent, doing as they like, entering, the continent, like the continent doesn't have people who own it, as if it doesn't people it belongs to. I think it is something that needs to be stopped, and it can only be stopped. So what the Prime Minister Abiy is appealing to, that these problems cannot only be stopped politically. A lot of people look at it as a very complicated thing, but this is the only solution. That the earlier we face it, the earlier we face the idea of a united African state, the earlier our problems will be solved. And in the beginning, like we said, it will not be easy. We may have to pay a price for certain things, like what Shiba spoke about, that we have to compromise here and there because we get, in certain spaces, we get what is called the aid. But when we look at it critically, this aid, we are really not getting aid in the long run. In the long run, we are the ones who have been giving aid. Like recently, last year, I think it was 2020, a report came out. Even it was the United Nations itself which published this report, that Africa is losing close to, more than $100 billion every year to illicit financial outflow. And this money was traced, that the money is going to places like the United States, is going to places like Europe. So when you look in the background critically, you see that Africa is really not receiving aid, but rather it is the one giving aid to these countries, that they come here, their banks and financial institutions, their mining corporations are stealing from our people, There are telecommunications companies like, they are here, MTN and all that, DSTV. When you trace these companies, they are not really African in nature, but they are people who are sitting in Europe and Canada. So how can we solve these problems? And he's pointing out, just like how Nkrumah pointed out, that we need a politically united continent in every sense to fulfill, the ideas of Pan-Africanism and the vision of an African Renaissance. African Renaissance, I think here he's meaning that Africa has to be reconstructed as a civilizational state. So in every sense, whether you are talking about high-speed trains, whether you are talking about aviation, whether you're talking about electronics and semiconductors, these are industries that need to be built, electric cars. We are not talking about foreign companies like Toyota, coming here, or Volkswagen coming here to assemble cars, assemble parts which are already manufactured in Europe. But we are talking about manufacturing the vehicles in every sense, because we have the bauxite. What don't we have? We have the cobalt in the Congo. We have the lithium in Zimbabwe. We have the lithium in Congo. We have the lithium in Ghana. We have lithium everywhere on the continent. We have the gold. We have the uranium to power the continent in form of electricity. So we have this energy that is not used. We have these materials that are not used on the African continent. They are being used to power Europe. They are being used to power the United States, Canada, and Australia, and right now, recently, China and India, which is coming in. So how can we mitigate all these problems and stop the outflow of Africa's money, which is supposed to, to be financing African projects? Like when you look at the deficit, the infrastructure deficit in Africa is up to around $200 billion. But some of our analysts and researchers have said that that $100 billion, which was said that is the annual financial illicit outflow that is happening, is less. The money is almost more than $200 billion. So that was a conservative figure, but the real figure is up to $200 billion, the money that is flowing out of Africa. And like I said, most of this money is going to the United States, is going to Europe. These are the people who are stealing from us. So they are the same people who are saying that they are giving us aid. When you look around, they are not really giving us aid, but rather they are using the aid, which they are calling, they are using what they are calling aid to steal from us. So it's like a trap, which they are using. So unless we face the issue of a united Africa, which African continent, a single government, single military, single foreign policy, we will not be able to address this problem. We will not be able to get our, African Renaissance, which President Abiy is talking about in every sense. So I thank you very much, Maled.
Thank you very much, Kwame, for that insight. And yeah, I was thinking when you talk about all those natural resources in the continent and uranium, for example, I was listening recently, like a couple of days ago, an analysis on the geopolitical shift in the greater Horn of Africa that we are seeing currently. And the analyst was actually saying that Ethiopia found this not really a great deal, but just sparks of uranium here and there in the Afar region. And when Ethiopia started to export that, the US that is based in Djibouti not only has just a military base, we're actually viewing what is exported to outside, and they have stopped it, and nobody said anything. This was years ago when TPLF was in power, actually. So yeah, even if when you have the ability and the capacity to trade that, how you will be able to do it, maybe it's another topic for another time to discuss.
Yeah. So let me just come in a little bit there. So the problem, there's a way society is organized from what Nkrumah was saying in the 1960s when he came up. There is a couple of things. I just want people to understand that, by the way, Nkrumah is the most quoted Pan-Africanist, when we are talking about the 20th and even up to the 21st century, is the most quoted Pan-Africanist because of the ideas that were flowing out of him, and how he was able to see the future. And he left us, a pile of material which he wrote down. He wrote almost more than 20 books and 20 pamphlets. So people have continued to quote him because of his foresight and the way he was able to understand how society is organized. So we have had these discussions politically, economically, what should come first and what should come last. But we cannot build programs like the Africa Continental Free Trade Area if we have not secured our borders. The borders of the African state, we cannot build the African Continental Free Trade Area when they are not secure. There's no way we can trade when we have rebels running all over from Mali, they are running all over in Niger, they are running all over Mozambique, they are running all over. We have the United States with its military bases, more than, I hear, around 50 military bases on the continent. So we cannot build the continent like that. We cannot do it. So we have to take control of the continent, and this comes from the political level. So I'll quote Nkrumah what he said, or I will paraphrase him. In 1963, he said that African unity is a political project. It is not an economic project. So he said that African unity is a political kingdom. It's going to be won by at the political level, because the social and economic, development of Africa will come from the political level. Once you are not organized politically, these other things, forget them, because you cannot build the Africa Continental Free Trade Area when the United States is influencing you. It has a military base, in the north of Ethiopia. So Ethiopia cannot carry out its economic, renaissance or revitalization when the United States has a military base in Djibouti. It will continue to interfere.
If I may comment, I think what happened recently with Ethiopia illuminates the state of Africa right now. It's there's a lot of what we're dealing with is has to do with perception and narrative. And I want to thank you, Mallet, for this Connect Africa, because I'm feeling inspired. I'm actually very excited. I'm hearing such intelligent people on this panel, and I'm thinking there's hope for Africa. Just hearing you speak, hearing my sister speak, meeting you, Mallet, recently gives me hope. That there's hope for the continent, because a lot of it has to be with narrative. I'm taking my son, I keep on saying this, on tour of Africa, and he's blown away. He's Canadian, but he's blown away by the beauty of Africa. There's a lot of narrative that is constructed against us, and that narrative disempowers us from actually embracing the beauty of the continent. I start with that, and for that I'm taking as a beginning. Yes, there are the crises in West Africa, especially the rebels running wild. But we have to face a fact, though, that does Ethiopia really have a war? I was in Ethiopia last until 4 days ago. Who called it a war? Is it a skirmish? Is it an inter-ethnic rivalry? Who names these things? Would you call the storming of Capitol Hill a war? Sometimes the words that are used on Africa provides. The crisis in Africa is an economy for the world. There are many from Russia, Italy, name it, that make a living from the notion of a crisis in Africa. And that crisis drowns us. I was in Ethiopia. I'm in Dar es Salaam. I've been in Nigeria. I can't describe what is happening in Ethiopia as a war. It's a choice of words, you know, and I think that for me, it's as simple as that. Africa is beautiful and ready. We don't have to, that notion that we have to get Africa ready before something happens, I don't believe anymore. Because I went to Rome 4 years ago and it stank. I keep on telling people Rome stank of garbage all over the street. But Rome embraced itself as the romantic city of the world. So sometimes we have to watch the words. They keep on telling Africa to be ready. Be ready. You have to work hard to get to somewhere. Where? We are there already. It's the narrative that pulls us down. As a Pan-Africanist, I just celebrate the beauty of Africa. Simple. And I denounce the lies. Because there are lots of lies. That narrative about war on Ethiopia, we should stop it. There's no war there. You have an inter-ethnic rival conflict. There's no war. They keep on telling people are dying. I don't see the image. I worked in Ethiopia for 4.5 years. I don't see it. And keep on telling me, show me where these things are happening. It's a narrative that is used to create jobs for people, to keep on putting Africa down. We watch the narrative we use. Because it's not true. I'm in Dar es Salaam. I'm sitting in a beautiful, by the sea. Africa is gorgeous, beautiful. And we must stop thinking we have to work on Africa to get somewhere. Because Africa is there already. It's the narrative that is used to shut us down. It's the narrative that is used to shut us down. I'm in Africa. I leave Canada. My son is Canadian. We prefer to be in Africa and we tour Africa. Yeah.
So, if I may chime in, may I chime in real quick, sister?
Thank you, my brother and sisters.
May I chime in here, Malet?
Yes. I was going to reflect, but yeah, this is
Okay, no, I just wanted to say that I think it's very important that as Sister Choice is bringing up how the world or the international media and such paints Africa, how it is in the best interest of the international players that extract so much of our resources, that profit so much from the African continent in various ways, including the mass exploitation of such humanitarian or crisis aversion programs and such that are pushed on Africa because it makes a lot of money for a lot of organizations. But I think it's equally important to address our issues internally as well. Specifically, in speaking of Ethiopia, depending on where you are on the country, you may see one or the other reflected. I think it's part of what I criticize, and I think we should all, have freedom to criticize our leaders in a democratic manner, not to stand against our sovereignty, which I believe is our primary objective as Pan-Africanists, is to protect our sovereignty. But within the country, when there are conflicts and things where people are constantly suffering, and again, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, as well as so many other leaders and in publications, have reiterated over and over that our inability to control our issues internally are directly a result of external pressures, external players that are promoting one side, demoting one side, and playing power economics to cause and exacerbate the issues that we have. We ourselves have to have the responsibility of informing our people and informing the world of the true nature of the situation. So, in that aspect, is there a war going on? This war has been going on. It's caused a lot of suffering between different groups. But the key thing that we want the world to realize is that Africans are not just savagely killing other Africans. So much to against the narrative that's always constantly being pushed. There's reasons for these things to happen, and it's a lot of times because of pressure and buy-in from external factors, whether they are international bodies or even governments that take one side over the other and ignore largely the issues that are happening in other areas. And I'll give an example. throughout the year of this conflict, it's been published, time and time again, that the Ethiopian government has done a bad job at controlling and stabilizing the country. And while some could criticize this, what we also have to note is that the aggression and the destruction and all of the other things that have taken place, despite the numerous attempts to restore peace, have not been reflected equally. So when the TPLF right now is still attacking Afar, it's still attacking parts of North Amhara, and people are still suffering. And then you have our government, which is trying to do the peaceful negotiations, which has averted from directly engaging inside of Tigray and causing more harm to civilians. The U.S. press secretary recently noted that aggression needs to stop on both sides. And things like this are very impacting because it's not both sides. It's, you have a sovereign government that's been elected by the people, whether you want to criticize or not, that is doing its duty and job to protect the nation and play by the rules of the international community. Then you have rebels and other groups who are opposed to a government that are constantly causing frustrating things. And Brother Kwame mentioned as well, while we have internal issues like this, our efforts to control and fix our internal issues are constantly being compromised and hindered by outside players. And as Africans, we have to understand that there's multiple levels and facets to the conflicts and the war and the things that we face, and it's upon us to strengthen our African to African relationships, to use our allies to promote solidarity and to rise together to fight against Western aggression.
My sister, sorry to interrupt.
No
Sorry,
problem.
I don't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry if I may come in. We have an African leader. I don't think we've had any other who won a Nobel Peace Prize, and he deserved it. He conceded to the Eritrea and Ethiopia border crisis, which no international organization could do. Half of his cabinet were women. He approved the president as a woman. He invited those on exile to come back. He made the message and spoke peace, and he won the Nobel Peace Prize. The minute Abiy Ahmed got that prize, the West got very active. It's like we have to prove them wrong. The media got active. It's like a Nobel Peace Prize winner is off to war. Abiy Ahmed did not go to war. There's been a construct, a deliberate construct to demonize this man, as has been done through Africa's history. We talk about the future. We keep on talking about the future. Let's not forget Thomas Sankara. Sankara spoke the way Abiy Ahmed is speaking. Thomas Sankara was 36 years old. He went to the AU and was saying we have to start manufacturing our clothes from local produce. He wore a shirt made from cotton from Burkina Faso to the African Union. It was called African AU, another name then. This man is dead. What he said, in 1986, I think that those who give you aid control you. He said it. There's nothing new that we're talking about that has not been said like 25 years ago. Thomas Sankara said it, that when you rely on aid, you become a slave. You cannot have self-sufficiency when you rely on that. Most Africans don't care. They operate in separation from the fact that their countries go beg every year for aid. Even countries as rich as the Democratic Republic of Congo. So Abiy Ahmed won a Nobel Peace Prize. He does not have to prove himself to the world that he's a good man. There was a reason why he won it. They reviewed him, he won it, he earned it. But even after I earned it, Al Jazeera, the media, went after him. It's the same thing they do to a lot of African leaders. The only way you can be a good African leader is if you lay yourself open to be managed from the West. This man is a proud African man. He's a proud Ethiopian, and he wants to rule his country with kindness, unity, peace, and love. He said that many times. He forgave a lot of people, but this man is still being penalized. There's no war in Ethiopia. There's a conflict which you have in different places. I'm half Canadian. I'm Canadian and Nigerian. And in Canada, Quebec, you have some part of Quebec who want to separate. They don't insult Quebec because of that. They want to separate. It doesn't mean Canada is not united. Why do they define Africa in such a negative way when the story is the same in the West? The fact of the matter is that why are they naming and wanting to demonize Abiy Ahmed? And this is not him alone. Luckily, we are in the 22nd or 21st century. Usually they kill them. So please, I'm sorry I'm coming in. There's no war in Ethiopia. We should stop using that language. Who is telling us I was in Ethiopia for 6 weeks? And I went around. And before that 6 weeks, I worked in Ethiopia for 4.5 years. I went to Mekelle and the other places. If you have a war, you know you have a war. But the West, people sitting in Washington, in Nairobi, are saying, oh, the Nobel Prize winner is leading a war. And this man has not been allowed to do his job. It's the same way as Kamala Harris. When you're black, it's a global racism.
If I may come in, Sister Joy, sorry not to interrupt. You're there. We didn't lose you. Yeah. No, what I wanted to say is we may give it a different adjective in front of it, but there is a war in the country going on. I mean, that could be internal, between ethnic groups or anything, but there is a war and there are people suffering because of that war, unless if the definition of war
let me come in a little bit. I think what she wanted to
say, but just to make it clear, sorry, don't forget your point. Yes, there is a bashing of and demonizing of leaders. This is their pattern, the international media. Yes, he did win that Nobel Prize, but of course, he's not stopping there when his country is endangered. He has also a responsibility to defend his country and to make sure the security of his people, which includes people in all parts of the country, including the people in Tigray and including all those regions where that conflict has now expanded and people are suffering. But of course, the negative media, yeah, that's something else which I was going to raise it next. Yeah, quickly you can reflect, Kwame, and let's move on.
I think what Okoro wanted to say, I think maybe is that we should probably call it maybe like a mutiny, because this is a rebellion. And the fact is a rebellion in a sense that these are guys who are trying to take over the government. They are trying to provoke the government, trying to not follow the instructions of the government, the central government, the federal government, to create their own instructions. Like they want to do their own voting. When the government, as the central government, the federal government has said, the voting has been postponed. So it is not a war to an extent that it was just a rebellion, and it did not go like full extent to war that these guys we fought maybe for 2 months or 3 months. the government, whenever it went in, like when it went to Tigray, it was able to put out this, what was a mutiny. It is when the government came back to Ethiopia and said, let us leave the people in their peace, let us leave the economic activities to go on. Then these guys went ahead and organized, and they got trucks from the United Nations, which they were using, to attack the central government and run, all the way to Amhara, and then, they were getting support from the Western media that they are taking over the country. But whenever the country, the federal government has taken up weapons to go and fight them, they have not been there. So to a certain extent, I agree with Okoro that it was not really a war; it was maybe a mutiny. It was a mutiny, even though they have continued.
Thank you so much, my brother.
Yeah, even though they have continued to go on and disturb the other areas which are surrounding Tigray, like how Sheba has mentioned. But every time, from the onset, I saw that they don't have the capacity to stand the Ethiopian army if the Ethiopian army has come to, to put them down. So it's just that Prime Minister Abiy is a very good man. He's a very, let me say, he's just a good man, that he doesn't want to see blood shed, even though these guys have continued to shed blood. Okay, so he wants to have this conversation, dialogue with the people, so that they can understand that Tigray is part of Ethiopia, and they need to participate in the development of the country, not to pick up weapons and destroy. He spoke about this even in the speech, that there's been destruction of lives, destruction of property. He's really concerned.
He's a good man.
He's just a good man. So if he wanted
Let's
to crush
embrace our Africa heroes. We need heroes, and he's a hero. He's an African hero. Let's embrace our heroes. This is not a time where we kill our heroes. Abiy Ahmed is a hero. And I think it's about time we fight for our heroes. We stand behind them. We don't let the Western narrative kill our heroes. This man is a hero. I was in Ethiopia for 4.5 years. I was there before he came into power. I saw how he came into power. I listened to his speech. He's a hero. I'm almost losing my job because I refused to denounce him. I said, I will speak for him. Fire me if you want. Because that man is a hero. We need heroes. My son needs an African hero he looks up to. We cannot demonize all black men. We can't. We cannot demonize all black Africans because the West tells us to. We need our heroes. And when we find one, like Abiy Ahmed, we will protect them. And I'm protecting him for my son, because my son needs to hear that story. He needs to look up to a black man. And I think this is what we forget. Some people, we should stop co-opting the Western narrative, because they have their heroes. I need my black men to celebrate. And Abiy Ahmed is one of them, because I watched him closely. Nobody's perfect. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a man who conceded, who submitted to regional harmony, who was gender sensitive. What more? He invited the exiles back. What more do they want from Africans? The only thing he didn't do, he didn't go bow to the EU and the West. That's why he's being punished. Abiy Ahmed is punished because he did not submit. He was too proud and too good looking. He was a handsome, young, proud black man.
Okay, to stick to the subject of our discussion today, rather to focus on the speech, not the one who spoke. So my next question, probably this will broaden what we are speaking, because it's about media. He said that, Sister Sheba, this is for you. The stereotypical and negative media representations of Africa not only misinforms the rest of the world about our continent, but it also shapes the way we see ourselves as Africans. And he went further and said, telling our own stories and shaping our own narratives must be our top priority. I know that you have been, you work with media. I mean, you have your own media, and also you have this. You are a founder with others of this ET Hub platform or an organization that has been working in the past year when Ethiopia was fighting that media war. There was two types of war. Basically, there was war on the ground, battle on the ground, and another one, the misinformation, that was coming out from the so-called international media, and he proposed actually a Pan-African media house. How do you think, your experience, in fighting those false narratives for the past year and having this Pan-African media, how does that solve the problem if it's going to be doable at all?
Yeah, yes, Malet. Thank you for bringing that up. I think that one of the main reasons why I support this platform, Connect Africa, and various other African-owned platforms like this, whether they're on YouTube or starting or somehow well established, is because I think it's of grave importance that we are in front of our own stories, that we are not only reliant on what the Western world or other major platforms are speaking on Africa, that we recognize the danger of not having our own infrastructure to own our own stories, because we have all been preyed on with misinformation, disinformation at times, and probably mostly intentionally crafted narratives to encourage the divisive division within countries, within nations. And these are the things that in this digital world that have been a major element of controlling peace and pushing people towards unity. I think it's been weaponized against Africans as it's weaponized against minorities and others in Western countries and all over the world. And we really need to stand firm on this, because in my opinion, it's just as important as our self-sustaining on economy, and also somebody mentioned earlier, it's the political relationship between groups, between leaders, between nations within Africa is a critical point in how we merge our interests, we fight for each other, we unify our objectives, and we fight against neocolonialism. And at this present time, while we're waiting for reports to come out from France 24 and Reuters and other agencies, the real story is on the ground. The real stories are with the people. So the people's voice and the people's interests have to be elevated. They have to be amplified. And now we have not just suppositions, but we have direct response to things that our government and our leaders are being criticized from, because we are able to not only show how many great things are happening in Africa, how many development initiatives are taking place, how much growth, but we also get to tell our stories when we're being manipulated by one side versus the other. And as we've seen in other countries, and we've even seen in Ethiopia, where the TPLF, for instance, has received a lot of positive press, where child soldiers were described as, what do they call them? enthusiastic freedom fighters. What it is they're child soldiers, and they were used, by this terrorist group, to attack neighboring nations, not nations, I'm sorry, but other regions within the country, and this is horrible. So when you see the direct impact of Western meddling in our internal affairs, you see how they highlight and they demonize one side and they promote the other, and it always serves their interests. And when we have our own African-owned media house, when we have a Pan-African voice that's united, that speaks our stories, we can unapologetically, fight for our own people, and then speak amongst our people to solve our problems. We don't promote that there's no problems. We promote that we can fix our problems. We're capable of fixing our problems. We don't need, the Western world to come in to fix our problems. We don't need the narrative that says that we're incapable or that our leaders cannot, because we promoted our leaders. We elected our leaders, and we can fix our internal issues. And if we have our own media, we control the stories, we control the information, and we will not weaponize, but we will arm ourselves against weaponized misinformation.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Shiva. I was going to direct the next question to actually Choice. Did we lose her? Oh, she's here. Okay, yeah. I thought we lost you. Sister Choice, thank you, Sister Shiva, for that. Sister Choice, how I know you is, as you know, that you are this strong advocate of for African countries not to have, unchecked international body or humanitarian presence in their country, for long. They have to check from time to time. And Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, in his speech today, he actually pushed for Africa, not one, but two, to have 2 seats in the United Nations Security Council. You working in the United Nations for so many years, and knowing the structure, how it is, the principles that it has. Is it possible at all for Africans to have
Thank you.
a permanent?
Thank you, Malet. And just to let you know, I've had, I think this is it. When you go out, there's something that's been happening for a while, and most African countries are not aware of it. There are countries from Africa that go out to the international arena to appeal for aid. Basically, what they are saying is that they have a lot of problems and the government cannot cope. It's beyond the capacity of the country or national authorities to cope. So they want aid. They're begging. And I've been working in my field for the last 15 years, and I realized most African countries don't understand it. So I started raising awareness about it. And because it has an impact in terms of all the messaging that the country wants to portray. There are many African countries that are looking at things like branding, economic branding, and positive branding. It doesn't make any sense, because we're going to, I keep on saying that we're going to be raising funds to deal with your crisis. And nobody wants to support your tourism or whatever if you have a crisis. Now, it's a dual communication, conflicting one that continues. So you have a situation where there are 16 countries, 14, then 2 regions. Ethiopia is one of them. So in as much as we think, whatever we think about Ethiopia, Ethiopia says it's in crisis and it needs aid. It needs humanitarian assistance. So when African countries go out to appeal for these things, it's very hard. It puts people like me in a difficult situation, because I think Ethiopia is beautiful. So if I say Ethiopia is beautiful, is safe, there are others who are going to come after me to say, oh, when you say that, we don't raise funds for crisis. Because we need to say Ethiopia is in crisis. It's insecure. So it's the duality and the conflicting communication when it comes to aid, appealing for international humanitarian assistance. And there are many African countries that have been doing that for the last over 25 years. And nobody talks about it. The Africans working in the system as well. I started talking about it. And it's not safe for me. You know, people are mad at me. Because I'm saying, no, if you're going to appeal for aid, let people know. So you understand. I tour Africa. I'm sitting in Dar es Salaam right now, and it's beautiful. It's a tourist location. I was in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, tourist location. I traveled to across Africa. I have a Canadian passport and a Nigerian passport. But people are mad at me when I say Ethiopia is safe. Because Ethiopia has to be promoted as unsafe to raise funds. And this is what Africans don't get. You know, Ethiopia, for us to raise funds for humanitarian assistance, Ethiopia must be promoted as unsafe. So when I go out in the media and say, oh, Ethiopia is beautiful, here I am, a union, come tourism, bring tourism here, I'm penalized. And it's the same thing, and these are the nuances that Africa does not get. These are the nuances Africa does not get, because there are people who are employed in it. So they think, I'm thinking, no, you can't do that in Europe. So Mallet knows me very well, and I'm grateful to Mallet. I'm grateful to Connect Africa. I'm so grateful because Mallet, in her passion, has given a platform for us to speak. We need to support this sister as much as we can because she's brilliant. Because I had nowhere to say this until Mallet came. So when we go all the way to say, let's rebrand South Africa, we are branding Africa, it doesn't matter. Because in South Korea, if they reference Africa, they're talking about a child needing aid. It doesn't matter what we do until we denounce and step away from this negative charity branding of Africa. I've been saying this, that it doesn't matter how much Ghana wants to brand itself for economic opportunities. It doesn't matter. Insofar as you have countries in Africa, the notion that Africa is a charity case, the dumps on the economy. And Ghana is beautiful. Ethiopia is gorgeous. I mean, in Tanzania, beautiful. It doesn't matter because there's a machine out there that promotes Africa for charity, because there are tons of people who make a living from an Africa perceived to be needing aid and diseased. So that's my message. That's what I'm trying to communicate. It's simple for me that it's this. You know, and I want to say as I finish, I'm grateful to Mallet because I've been doing this on my own, and I'm so blown away and impressed to encounter Mallet because and my Ghanaian brother and my sister who spoke. I just realized that I'm not alone. I thought I was alone all along. I just realized I'm not alone, and this is what I'm grateful for, because it's the future of my son. It's a legacy that I want to leave. So thank you, my sister. When I hear you guys speak, I want to almost cry. I'm grateful to Mallet. I think she's just amazing. Then hearing both of you speak just tells me hope. You've just given me so much strength. You've just inspired me. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Big time. Thank you.
I mean, there are small, little of us here and there. We might not have a bigger platform, but there are other people who are having this YouTube Pan-African platform. That's why, indeed, we need a bigger Pan-African media house that will encounter those like Al Jazeera, CNN, and others were sponsored by their governments. Brother, you wanted to say something to reflect on what she said? You were coming in.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the media issue, and also on what Sister Choice was saying. When it comes to the issue of aid, our economists, our own economists, for a very long time, I've spoken about this, how it is important for Africa to engage in trade instead of aid, because aid for a very long time has been seen as something which is very destructive, and is only benefiting the Western world. Actually, it's not benefiting us. It's benefiting these dictators that are being propped up. If you go and examine a book which was written by an international economist from Zambia who's called Dambisa Moyo. That book was written way back. It is called Dead Aid. I think it was released in 2000. So that book is incredible. It paints for you the picture for you to understand what aid is doing to the continent. In the 1970s, Africa, when it was emerging from the independence era, after we had achieved independence, Africa had a share of around 5%. It had gained a share of 5% of the international industrialization. And after the 70s, they came in after overthrowing a couple of our independence leaders. And when they achieved that, then they unleashed the structural adjustments on the continent. And so those structural adjustments, they came with conditions of us deindustrializing the continent, sale of the industries. They looked at the continent as if we are very dangerous competitors. So they prescribed these solutions that we should not be able to have industries. We should not manufacture things here. You see some countries had even started manufacturing vehicles in the 1960s, but they discouraged all that and they killed off the industries. They didn't want us to have aluminium, manufacturing industries, steel industries, and all these, because they look at our resources as their own, and they should take our resources and refine them from outside, and then bring those resources and then start giving us aid. We should live in penury. So they are really scared of facing this competition from Africa. But I'm very optimistic about the next generation, our generation, because we are now more educated.
Sorry, Kwame, before you continue with that, again, don't forget your point. Sister Shiba, are you leaving? You gonna leave us early, or?
I have a few minutes, Malet. I'll let Brother Kwame
Because
finish.
I wanted to comment something before you leave.
Sure. I'll wait.
Is Shiba leaving us? Don't leave us, Shiba.
Not leaving. I was just giving her a heads up that we have been here for a few hours.
I just love her. This is just a beautiful panel. Thank you so much.
Yes, I'll stick around.
So don't leave us, Shiba.
Okay, all right.
Okay, Kwame,
yeah.
You can say.
I was saying that this generation, I think we have figured out how the world is running. We do. What I'm more optimistic about is that we understand how the world was built. We understand now how the United States built itself, and especially on the back of Africans, and how Europe, they constructed it through the back of Africans and exploitation of African resources. So I'm more optimistic now of the fact that it is not really aid that constructed these nations, and we understand how China has been built in less than a period of 40 years, less than 30 years. We saw Korea, we saw Singapore, how all these countries were built. Now we are seeing Taiwan and
Malaysia.
We are seeing Vietnam. Yeah, so these countries, they have been built on trade and industrialization. So I think that this trend of trade will be rejected, and we as Africans, we We reject it, and it is denigrating and disrespectful, and it robs us of our dignity and respect. And I think we will continue to reject the idea of trade if they do not want to. I mean, we will continue to reject the idea of aid if the West feels that it cannot trade with us. I think we are going to meet head on, and there's going to be a clash with the next generation of African leaders and young people who have come up, because we are not as dumb as in the 60s or in the 40s, and where they came around and pushed us around. Right now, the continent is around 65% of literacy rate. And of that, is the youngest, population around the world. Is the youngest continent with 70% of those people below the age of 30. So I think consequently, very soon we will come head on and confront these guys, who have been peddling this narrative of aid. If you look around the continent, why this aid thing has been pushed very, very much is because those leaders who are there, 70s, like if you go to Uganda, you have a leader who is around 76, you go to Ghana, 77 years, you go to Cameroon, these all the guys. But when you go to the countries which have younger leaders like Ethiopia, there is hope. You can see hope there that President Abiy has been trying to do the right things. Like you see how the Ethiopia Grand Renaissance Dam was financed. It was not financed with any money from aid. When you go to Tanzania, when President Magufuli was there, he never financed any projects with aid. He financed a 2,000 megawatt dam in Tanzania with Tanzanian money. He just mobilized the money from inside. He financed the new airline, Tanzania Airlines, where they purchased 7 planes without borrowing any money. So they built a lot of infrastructure. So they realized that the Western countries have been stealing from us. So if they have been stealing from us, they're stealing our gold. We have to take some of that gold and finance the hospitals, finance the roads, finance the infrastructure which we want. They have been able to, by the time he died, he left that they have even purchased the electric trains, which are going to be powered by this 2,000 megawatt dam that he was building. And can you imagine, he did this in less than a period of 5 years, which he was there, because he was just starting his second term before he died. So I think that our generation of young people, we have seen this example. With this example, which we have seen of President Magufuli, the late President Magufuli, I think we are on strong ground. We are seeing Prime Minister Abiy, he's setting already a very good example and calling on Pan-Africanism. I think we are on good footing right now for us to deal with the problems of the 21st century and to deal with imperialism and its aggression in the 21st century. We understand that all the continent belongs to us. And I think that we will continue to stand our ground and insist that countries like France, they will not be they will not be allowed to interfere in how Africa is conducting its affairs. Countries that the United States, we will not continue to allow it to spring up military bases all over the continent, but rather we will push that the United States should withdraw its military forces. So we understand that everything is determined at the political level, and we will continue to push Africa to the level of unifying politically, so that we can be able to expel all the neo-colonialists who are on the continent, whether it is France, whether it is Australia, whether it is Canada, whether it is Britain, whether it is whoever, the United States, and all these who are interfering in how Africa is conducting its affairs. So the united Africa is what we have, I think, to concentrate our forces on, so that we can be able to conduct our affairs internally in peace. And this is also the same thing which Nkrumah emphasized, that we cannot conduct our affairs internally unhindered by crushing neo-colonial controls if we do not unify. So the unity of Africa will give us the ability, as to conduct our affairs as independent states within. So we have this big blanket outside to protect us, so that we can conduct our affairs without interference. The unity is for protecting us from external aggression and interference. So it's not for anything. It's not for creating a homogeneous society. We understand that we have over 2,000 cultures on the continent, and these are nations. according to our history, these were nations. But those nations, our cultures, for them not to be interfered with, for them not to be annihilated, we need a blanket outside, like a huge blanket to protect those cultures so that they can flourish within, so that we can, interact, we can learn from each other, we can speak with each other, we can trade with each other peacefully. So we need a union government outside of the continent. It is the only thing which will be able to secure us in a way that the outside will not interfere with us. We can sit down and negotiate. Africans like dialogue. They don't like, picking up weapons to go and fight with each other. We can sit and dialogue, but this union and unified security and foreign policy, they are the ones which will be able to protect us, and it has only to come with through the union of African states. So that is the point which I wanted to make in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Kwame. Always good to hear your view, as a staunch Pan-Africanist. Yeah, I love to hear what you say. Sister Shiba, are you with us? Yes. Okay. Let me mute others. Yeah. Not to hear my echo. One of the things for me, I think the highlight of this speech was that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, giving a recognition to Africans, and the weight of it, you see, in the way he described it, if it wasn't for our African brothers and sisters, the existence of Ethiopians as a nation would have been endangered. That's a great deal, really, because we have talked a couple of times how I was, worried, or how worrisome it looked, that unless we institutionalize this support that we get from our brothers and sisters, and how to also, to continue, try to apply it also in other African countries who have the same problem like Ethiopia, with all the experience that we have had in the past year. I think it's a great thing to be able to share that, and to be vocal as well, for other African countries as they stepped in for us, for us also, to step in for them, or to be vocal about them. And the other thing is, the way we started it looked like, a kind of a campaign that it will not be institutionalized. It was here and there. It didn't seem just in a way, in harmonized ways that the government will give it recognition. So I was very happy. What's your comment, for Ethiopia or for Ethiopians to leverage from this, from the support that we get from Africans, and how we can take it forward?
Thank you, Malet. Thank you for that question. And I think I agree with you. I noted that in the Prime Minister's speech when he did a call for solidarity, as well as thanking the AU and African nations for the support during this troubling time. And what really resonates, and just going back into this our fight on from the Western side, people who are diasporans, for instance, fighting the misinformation and everything else that's been going on. We have raised our voices, and we've seen the rise of movements that have reinvigorated that Pan-African spirit across nations. And there's nothing more important for the world to see than Africans uniting with one and a universal objective, right? So what's happening in Ethiopia is just an example of what happens in other places where the truth is not told. There's information that demonizes us, and for Africans to rise together and recognize and resonate with the issues across borders and stand together, there's that's a very encouraging and very it's very empowering for our future, because it's critical to even note that despite efforts to create a picture of Ethiopia being a complete, mess and chaos, and the U.S. Embassy posting "Do not travel," and things like that, and other embassies as well. You have African leaders from across the entire continent represented at the AU summit together. To handle and to discuss African issues, to discuss African growth, to discuss the future of our people. So this, even in a symbolic way, shows the unfettered support that we have, and that for Ethiopians, I think, who are now have been absorbing the internal conflict, all the remnants of the ethnic division that have been laid into the country's fabric by the TPLF and over the past 20-something years. People who are now in a microcosmic, polarized viewpoint need to learn and see how, when you even have people from across the continent reaching out and standing for the sovereignty of the country, that this is something to take into note and take ourselves outside of our specific or individual issues, and look beyond the immediate, and look at the future of what it means, and to really strengthen our power in numbers, because it's going to take all of us to stand together and to speak against our common enemies, and to help one another in all of our efforts, whether it be the economic independence that Sister Choice is talking about. How can we use our internal intercontinental trade and other economic connections to reinvigorate our own economies, and truly drive towards self-sufficiency, and cut off the dependency on these other from Western aid or international aid in all aspects as much as possible, and drive towards that in a very meaningful and practical way. Because without these things, and without our solidarity, even with one or two nations still succumbing to Western domination, this will create even more conflict. So it's on our own interest to work together, and it's truly inspiring, the Pan-African movement that they want to tell you is dead. I think that when we stand together and you see those banners and Africans of all nations speaking together, standing together, it's a symbolic thing. So no matter how many articles come out, the visuals, they can't get rid of that. And we're showing up and we're showing out. And I think I'm very grateful for my African brothers and sisters wherever, even in listening to other programs that you've had, Mahalet, and to see how well informed our people are from different countries on the intrinsic things that are going on within this country. It's inspired me to be more aware of internal conflicts and other things going on in other countries, and spreading that as well, because this is what it takes for us to fix our own problems. So very proud of that, and I think it was well done on his part to mention that we are grateful, and that we should continue to invigorate this kind of message across the continent.
Malet, I just wanted to add something on what Sister Sheba has said. The media, I think it is very encouraging on the media side that there has been this democratization of technology. I think technology also has played a very important role, that is sort of like the media space has now been democratized. Since the 1960s, you can see that it is around, there was around, I think, 3 or 4 Western media houses. In the 60s, you could see that BBC dominated most of the African continent when it comes to the media. So it was the only place which was looked at as the source of information for all the African continent. So what it said, it was sort of like undisputed, no one disputed what the BBC said because it was the only source of information. So they shaped the narrative however they wanted. But as things have, have gone on, as time has progressed, and this technology has become accessible to almost everyone. Now we have the internet. Things happen in real time. Like today, for example, when the Prime Minister gave his speech, I got the speech immediately, even before the BBC got the speech. Now we are here today on Connect Africa. We are commenting about the speech, even before any other media houses, would come to comment about the speech, whether it's CNN or BBC or Sky News or Fox News. So the technology, I think, has been used very well by the youth today, and we have to commend the youth, like Sister Sheba said, the African people. We have to thank them for this, but we will not stop there. I think we also have to appreciate the Prime Minister in his abilities. I spoke about this a time ago, that the Prime Minister has shown that he's a true leader in his abilities to mobilize the people all over the continent. He has been able to mobilize the whole continent and bring this, this awareness. So he made this an African problem, that the attack on Ethiopia is an attack on all Africans. So he made it very clear. He put this out as a Pan-African issue. It's an African issue, and in fact it is. It is. So you can see that during the swearing in of the Prime Minister for the second term, President Uhuru Kenyatta was in Addis Ababa to attend the swearing in ceremony, and he said that if Ethiopia cries, the rest of Africa cries. So the African people, they have a special connection to the Ethiopian state. So Ethiopia as a country, African people have a special connection to it. Maybe you may call it spiritual or whatever you may like. Anyone can call it whatever they like. But African people have a special connection to Ethiopia as a state, as their mother, as President Uhuru Kenyatta called it. So I think that we have a special connection there, that it was just only a matter of time that we would respond to this threat which wants to annihilate Ethiopia. And the other thing which I've looked at is that the fact that Ethiopia is the administrative capital, is where we have the African Union headquarters. So any takeover of the African Union means the African state and all the other African states have fallen. Ethiopia, the other thing is that is the aviation capital of the continent, where we have, Ethiopian Airlines. So it becomes a threat to all Africans, because Ethiopian, Airlines is the biggest, is the most used airlines on the continent. So any instability in Addis Ababa, it affects the rest of the continent. So that is why you see that all the other Africans had to come, whether they are in West Africa, when you're talking of Senegal or Ghana, Kenya, and all the others had to come in and support Ethiopia, so that it can be stabilized. And the fact that the president, Prime Minister Abiy was a democratically elected government. It's not a dictator who came, with guns and stuff. So he had all the support of the continent. But I think that he's done a very, very good job, and we need to continue to, to support him. And the experience that Ethiopia has gained through the use of the media, is the same experience, I believe, that the Prime Minister Abiy, in his speech where he spoke about establishing an African Union continental media house, he's pushing it. He's pushing this experience to the rest of the continent, so that we can be able to counter these negative narratives. And I think it will pay off. It will pay off. We are very fortunate that we are living at interesting times in the history of the world, that the media has been liberalized. You don't need CNN now to know what is happening. You can connect here, come to Connect Africa. You can connect to other Pan-African networks. You don't need the BBC. The networks which had monopoly over information. That monopoly has been broken. the CNN, all of them have been discredited because they are now, even in their own countries, even in the UK, the BBC is looked at negatively. The rating, the Western media, its rating is actually below 35%. When you go to the United States, is around, I think, 29%, below, even way below 30%. It should be around 26 to 29%. That is the rating of the Western media in their own countries. So even the media, the Western media in their own countries, they don't trust them. So I think it is interesting times in which we are living, that the media has been liberalized and we have access to this information that we cannot be lied to. And to compound that problem is that the Western media has been participating in wars. It has been leading war cries and going to destroy countries in Vietnam, destroy countries in Iraq, destroy countries in Afghanistan. The Western media is the one which led all these, and they drummed up this war, destroy countries in Libya. They came and destroyed Libya. Unfortunately, with the support of some African countries, which was very unfortunate. If they had not done that, we could not have had that problem. The destruction of Somalia in 1993 and those years. So, but I am very optimistic, and I'm really glad that we are living at such interesting times when Prime Minister Abiy is even, proposing that we should have a Pan-African media network. I think it is very timely, and the experience which has been gained in Ethiopia in fighting this psychological war, I think can be extended to the rest of the continent, so that we can push out countries like France, which have become parasites, that they don't want to leave the continent. However much we say we are tired of them, they don't want to leave. So this power of the media and the liberalization, I think, history is very much on our side as we are struggling against these countries and their misinformation.
Thank you, Kwame, for that. Just to reflect on what you said, it's important that the ability of the Prime Minister to mobilize people both internally and also continental-wide was really something that should not be.
Absolutely.
No, he really did a great job. When I asked first Sister Shiba, because I found that difficulty, often even to myself, being a Pan-African, but also Ethiopian, I would always say, without being pro-Ethiopian, I cannot be a Pan-African. That definitely has gave me the foundation to be a Pan-African. But also, knowing the politics, you cannot be ignorant how divided we are, and here and there, the ethnicity. It's just crazy, and somebody will come and tell you in front of you, it could be a white person or anyone, while you are so divided, you can't even unite your country, and you talk about African unity and it's like, so I mean, it's true. How do I make that balance? Sometimes I answer to myself, like I'm just speaking my mind here, by constantly and forcing myself to look in the bigger picture, kind of make me not to look the small things and divisions. By promoting the bigger picture, it will help you. When people are suddenly, they find that there is everything in unity, and then they will, slowly or gradually, they will start to leave that kind of village or shelter or whatever they are hiding in ethnicity. So I just wanted to reflect on that. There are comments. There are two comments actually from one person which said, I don't know if it's a he or a she. The white supremacists have over 100 bases on my continent, and we sell uranium to them. What they will do the day we ask them to leave? Will they go quietly or drop uranium bombs on us? And he further questions, can the uranium sellers at least put a clause in the sale agreement that they cannot use uranium bombs anywhere in Africa? It's true. And Mike said, great discussion all at Shiba. Thank you for all the incredible work you do for Ethiopia and Africa. I also thank everyone else, including the host, for the hard working. Okay. And people encouraging and supporting what we are doing. Let me just ask Kwame, continuing. the prime minister actually said, I quote, today we stand as proud Africans, in the shadow of those who struggle to liberate Africa. What do you think, what was going on in his mind by putting this out?
Yeah, I think on that, he was looking at how it was sort of like summoning the spirits and of our ancestors who gave us independence, and how much they struggled. And this should give us pride. The fact that they were able to overcome during their times, they even had, tougher times than we have today. Like if you look at, for example, 1945, when the independence movement started in the 1945, there were enormous, problems. There were very, very, big problems during that period. Africa was just coming out of, neocolonialism. I mean, it was coming out of colonialism, and the times ahead, the future was really bleak. There was no economies, so everything, there was nothing really which we had. No roads like we have today, no communication systems like we have today. So these, our ancestors, they just took a leap of faith and said, let us take the continent, let us get independence, and then we'll see what will happen. We'll see what will happen with that independence. And there was a lot of challenges. We have got a lot of challenges even today. There was no communication systems during that period, that they could not communicate like how we are communicating like this. Someone, Sheba is in the United States. I mean, the western part of the continent. You are in Europe. They could not communicate like this, but our ancestors were able to overcome these problems. So if they were able to overcome these problems as a foundation on which they stood, I think we need to be proud of that. We need to stand as proud Africans. If you look at other continents, like the United States itself, where it is now, it has indigenous people there, but the indigenous people were wiped off the continent. You look at Australia, those are British people who are immigrants, but the indigenous people in Australia, they were wiped off the continent. So I think this is what the Prime Minister is saying, that we should be proud. Now, going even back, further, when we go to the year 1791 in Haiti, Haiti was able to beat France. It was able to beat Spain, was able to beat England, which wanted to enslave it further. When these guys fought against France and they stopped slavery, contrary to what they tell you around the world, that the British people stopped slavery. They did not stop slavery. The people who led the stoppage of slavery or the abolition of slavery, they were the Haitians, and these Haitians are Africans in the Caribbean. Now, these guys had enormous problems. Even up to today, the United States is trying still to dominate them. Just last year, the United States killed their president, President Moïse Juvenal, because President Moïse Juvenal was trying to assert the independence of Haiti, to try to, to assert its economic independence. And the United States considers all the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean its backyard, considers it its backyard. So they had to go in and send in, mercenaries from Florida. Some of them are from Florida. Some of them came from Colombia, and kill him. But what am I saying? I'm trying to say that we should be proud that our ancestors in 1791 in Haiti, they were able to achieve independence in 1804, and they came up against enormous challenges, no weapons, nothing. There was no economy. They had nothing. But if they were able to achieve independence and consequently usher in the abolition of slavery, in the 19th century, I think we need to be proud of that. And then when we come to 1945, we need to be proud that Nkrumah, with very little resources, resources, nothing completely, but a single Ghanaian economy, was able to support all the continent, and then, rescue the continent from colonialism and usher in independence. In this generation, we need to be more proud. We need to be proud as Africans. We need to stand as proud Africans. Why? The same reasons which I've mentioned, that technology has been liberalized. We are more educated. We should be proud that we are more educated. We understand what these guys know. And the fact that nations can be constructed now in less than 30 years, we should attempt to do that. But we can only do that through a union. So the idea of a united Africa, which Dr. Nkrumah left us, we cannot do away with it. We cannot conduct our internal affairs in the African continent. We cannot live peacefully as tribes of Africa and feed ourselves and cultivate our lands and enjoy our resources if we don't unify. Unity will bring us that, which I said, the external blankets, which will give us security, all of us inside this union, so that we can conduct our affairs. So that we have to concentrate our efforts there. And we can do it if our ancestors were able to put off slavery when they had nothing, completely nothing. If they were able to fight these white people, you know, in the 1940s and 50s and 60s and achieve independence, yet these guys were more equipped and they had more weapons than today, and they had communication systems. Our ancestors never had all the advantages which we have today. We are more educated. We have more resources even compared to them. We have more communication systems than they had. So we are in a much better position, you know, to rescue Africa and achieve that economic independence which we so much yearn of, so that we can conduct our affairs internally. But we can only achieve it through pushing for a united African state. And how can we do it? There's a couple of Pan-African organizations which are working on this. So that is where we have to look. The Pan-African organizations which are around the continent and those in the diaspora, that is where the answers are going to come from. And we have to agree that it is our responsibility, we as the youth. Once we agree that the next generation of leaders, forget about the generation which is going out, that you see that is in power right now. That is a gone generation. If you are in the age of, you know, 25 up to maybe, you know, 50, 45, 50, that is your responsibility to look at the continent and see, how do we unify the continent now? Now, when we start having these conversations of unifying the continent, like what a prime minister, you know, has been talking about, that we need a united Africa. We need a united African continent for us to fulfill the ideals of Pan-Africanism and Pan-African Renaissance. This is what the prime minister is talking about in his speeches, in his speech which he gave today. So this optimism that he's putting forward is trying to mobilize us. He's trying to call us. Let us establish a Pan-African media. He's trying to mobilize all of us who have now access to information. We should share it in the direction of unifying the continent. This is the optimism. For me, this is what made me really happy about this speech, that I felt very happy inside my heart. I felt galvanized inside. I felt, you know, extreme optimism washing over me, that we are now moving in the right direction. So I think we need to continue being optimistic and fight for what belongs to us, because it will not be given to us on a silver plate. The United States will not do it, that they will allow us to, you know, to go like that and unify and be free as a people and conduct our affairs, like how China had to fight them and push them out of the place. Before China started constructing its country, they had to fight. They fought Germany, they fought Britain, they fought, you know, France, they fought Portugal, they fought the United States itself. And the United States had to pack its things from China before China started, you know, unifying. Before it unified, it had to fight these guys before it started reconstructing economically. So that was the process. And we ourselves, we have to brace ourselves, Africans on the continent, especially the youth, Africans in the diaspora. We have the weapons now. We have the same weapons which they have been using. The media is a powerful weapon, extremely powerful weapon. So if we take the same weapon which we have used, you know, to save Ethiopia from this incursion, and we push that weapon, you know, all over the continent, and we say now we want union, the African leaders, they can't stand. They can't stand, you know, against that weapon. They can't stand against us and say, we will not give you, you know, unity. We will not give you a union government if you ask for it. There's no way they can refuse. So that is the only, I think, a thing which I want to appeal is that we have the power, we have the tools. It is us to use them. We have more tools than our ancestors had, yet they succeeded. So I think we should be able to succeed within this decade or a decade and a half. We don't have to to be to lose hope. Yet we have all these weapons at our disposal. I think we need to move with optimism, and we need to make it happen. We need to make the dream. Now that the Prime Minister Abiy has started talking about it, the importance of a union government on the African continent, we need to rally behind him and start pushing in that direction. And I'm very sure that within a decade, we will be able to achieve this objective. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's indeed good to hear, some optimists, view. But yeah, I hope it has to happen. It's just a matter of when it will happen. One thing is that for me, this speech, I think as far as dissecting is concerned, we have tried to look at each issues that the Prime Minister has raised in his speech. But before I kind of reflect on it in general, if anyone feels that there's something left out, I will give the opportunity, Sister Shiba, maybe. Then, yeah, we are on top of the hour, so we have to conclude as well.
Yes, thank you, Malet. I think the only thing I want to add in just speaking to our objective of reinvigorating Pan-Africanism and uniting our nations against common objectives and striving and working towards telling our own stories, owning our own information, and all of those things is that, tribalism is the exact and direct enemy of Pan-Africanism. And we really need to stress that. And we also have to be practical about how we handle our internal affairs, because whereas and every nation has its own specifics, we recognize the role of the outside world, external factors in our internal business. We also recognize the role of bad leadership that has got us into some of the messes that we've been in various African nations. And we have to be able to do the checks and balances within our countries, within our nations, support each other across borders to bring peace, to bring balance, and to help develop the infrastructures like media that are very important to handling our affairs, because it is misinformation both internally and externally that are creating and sustaining divisions. And but at the same time, we have to do our best and be candid in how we resolve issues, because we can't just poof and wipe away the issues that are happening. We have to address them full on, and we have to, in my belief, show our strength and our ability in how we can handle our own affairs. So in that aspect, I believe in accountability. And with that, I'm saying, while we know we've been compromised externally, we also have to, within our countries, within our nations, provide the assistance, the help, by any means necessary, restore stability by providing the support that people need, by speaking out for the people on the ground, and by supporting our leaders in these initiatives as well. So I think it's very important that we discuss all of it, and that we're unapologetic about the fact that we're not perfect, but we know how to handle ourselves and to fix our problems. And if we need help, we're going to ask for help from our neighbors before we jump across the ocean.
Indeed, well said. Thank you, Sister Shiva. That was really good one. So I know that we have held you here for long, from more than what you have planned, but I think it was a good one. It was good to have you. We didn't want to let you go before you share what you have to share with us. So while I also ask Kwame and Sister Choice for their final words, or if anything is left out, what they want to say. If you have to go, you are excused to go. But thank you very much. Yeah, it was very.
Thank you. Thank you, Malet. Thank you, Sister Choice and Brother Kwame. It's been a delight speaking with all of you today. And again, thanks goes out to you, Malet, for putting together this program. Just want to reinforce what Sister Choice said, and that we stand behind you in all of your efforts, and commend you highly for all the work that you're doing with Connect Africa. So thanks again.
Thank you. With all your support, I know that how much supportive you are, and you promote this program amongst your network. So thank you very much. Yeah, thanks, sis. That being said, Sister Choice, are you with us? Hello, Sister Choice.
Is she gone?
No, probably it's just on and maybe not by her device. Okay. Yeah, okay. If that's so. I mean, we took long, but it's okay. I mean, nothing is wasted. I hope you said everything, or is there anything to add? Let me reflect before you come in. While speaking that his the Prime Minister mobilization capacity and ability, when all that misinformation was raged, and they were very sure, the Westerns, that we will not be united. They were promoting everything except unity of Ethiopia. So every sect that says that works against the unity of the country, they promote, they interview, they build on the narrative. But in spite of that, they were able. He was able to mobilize. And of course, naturally, people want to be unified. I think that's a reality. That's why also, in a way, I did not expect that so much, Africans will be mobilized, because always we are caught, our plate is full, we are caught up within our own problems, and there's no good media that will really bring the right narrative. So you wouldn't think that will happen, but again, it happens. So it just assures you and adds probably to that, optimistic view that you projected it will happen in the next decade. People actually want to unite. They really want to unite, and that's who we are, maybe naturally. And if it wasn't all these borders that we had because of colonialism.
I think that the Western media underestimated the Prime Minister's abilities to mobilize the continent, and the Western world, to a very big extent, they don't respect history. They have these disorganized countries in the West that have been rising and falling in a very short period of time. They don't really have very big, long continuing civilizations on their continent. When you look at Rome, you look at Greece, you look at Germany, you look at France, how long they have been lasting, very, very few years, and they have been getting destroyed. They really don't have functional continuing civilizations. When you look at Britain itself, the UK, how long it lasted, as a superpower. When you look at the United States, how long it has lasted, is a very short period. So that period of superpowerdom, you can just count it maybe starting in 1945 up to now. Now compare that with the China, which has over 3,000 years of continuing civilization. When you come to Africa, we have empires like Ethiopia is a continuing civilization which has lasted for more than 5,000 years. You go to Kemet, which we call Egypt, is a civilization which lasted for more than 8,000 years. So they don't have this respect for history, that they underestimated the Africans and their ability to protect Ethiopia as their mother and as their symbol of pride, because Ethiopia is looked at in Africa as a symbol of pride. Not only in Africa, but the Black people all around the world. When you go back to the 1940s, when Italy was trying to attack Ethiopia, the African Americans in the United States, they enlisted to come and fight against, they wanted to fight against Italy and fight off this naked colonialism and aggression. And it's the same spirit in which the African people were, starting in 2020, when the United States was trying to attack. The African people said that if it need be, we'll go to Ethiopia and fight against the United States and its, aggression. This naked aggression will not allow it in any way near Ethiopia. So Ethiopia has a very, very special, place in the faces, in the hearts of Africans. And the other thing which I see that they underestimated was the media. They underestimated the penetration of technology in Africa. So they thought that we don't have this access to information, and they didn't know that this education has had an effect. This 65% literacy rate on the continent has an effect on Africans. So they thought that we are dumb, we don't know what's going on around the world. And with this, we have disproved them. This goes on, to reflect in when there was the French called a summit last year. And in that they invited the African youth, but you could see that the African youth were at the top of the affairs of the world and where the world has been and where the world is going. That the African youth were able to tell France that you have been in the continent behaving on one hand, you are talking about democracy. On the other hand, you are ganging up and collaborating with dictators on the continent and impoverishing the continent, and you are stealing from the continent. So they said that we don't understand which side you are on. So you have issues that you don't want to face your past of colonialism and exploitation of the continent, but then you want to come and engage the African youth. So where do you stand? We are confused where you want to stand. So they showed that they understand, the African youth understand what is going on. And as time has gone on, we have gotten this consciousness. There's a new consciousness that has arrived, and that technology is very, very much at the center of that consciousness, the technology. And this is something they cannot fight. They cannot fight the technology and how it has come. So at the same time, the technology is an advantage. At the same time, it has been a nightmare for them because it has brought about a new consciousness. And that new consciousness is sweeping all over the African continent. So it has brought to the fore the issues affecting the continent. And it has brought the fact that we as African people and African youth, we have to take control of the continent. And we are tired of aid, like what Sister Choice was talking about. We are tired of our continent being painted as a beggar continent, as a sick continent, poverty, wars and what. And yet we know that you are participating in destabilizing the continent. You are participating in all these things. So now we are saying that remove your hand from the continent and let us see if we will not manage our affairs. And you don't want to go. So France doesn't want to go. It doesn't want to come out of the continent. So now what is happening is the result. The result is what you see happening in Mali, that now we have to push you out by force. The result is what you are seeing happening in Guinea, that young people, when you look at the people who are taking power now through coup d'etats, all of them are young people below the age of 40. So this is the result of this level of consciousness that you are seeing that is sweeping all over the continent. And definitely we will take over the continent and put it in the right direction where we want it to be. There's no military base of the United States that will threaten us. There's no level of talking of media, because now we are in control of our own media and own narrative. There's no level of threat. There's no amount of threat. There's no amount of blackmail that we use that will work anymore, because we are operating on a far different level of consciousness. So this is where I see that the Prime Minister has succeeded, and I think he needs to push this ability to mobilize the continent, not only to protect Ethiopia, but to protect the whole African continent. And I want to reiterate that we have to push out to the United States. We have to push out all the Western countries from the continent. The exploitation is enough. Enough is enough. And in the same spirit of the movement that has been fighting for Ethiopia, I will say that no more to neocolonialism, no more to France, no more to the United States and its militaries all over the country. We don't need it. We don't need these countries. France, look at France, for example, 66 million people. What is France going to give to Africa, really? Nothing. The economy, or the combined economy of Africa is bigger than the economy of France. So what is it that France is bringing on the table? No market. It doesn't have a bigger market than Africa. It doesn't have a bigger economy than Africa. It doesn't have resources like Africa. So what is really France bringing to the table for us? What can France really protect Africa from? Nothing. There's really nothing that France can give us. So France has to be pushed out of the country. It has to go. So if it wants to beg, let it go to Europe and come as beggars. They have to come as beggars. They have no option. It's the same thing with the United States. Their population around 300 million. You know, look at the debt. It has ballooned to 30 trillion. They don't have money. They are just printing useless paper and giving us, giving it to some of our ignorant African leaders, and they accept it. It's fake money. What they are giving to our African leaders is really fake money. It's not real money. And they are stealing our resources with fake money, which they are printing. They're just printing, useless paper and bringing it here. And we have the resources. So we have to insist as enlightened people, as people who have gained a new level of consciousness, because we know what is going on around the world. And this blackmail by the United States and Europe and its partners, it has to be rejected. And we categorically reject it, that we cannot allow it to continue all over the African continent. The African continent belongs to the African people and people of African descent. It doesn't belong to Europeans and how they are trying to impose themselves on us. So I see what the Prime Minister Abiy has been doing and his moves as being to the point where we need to go as young people. We need to mobilize ourselves through the media and unify the continent very, very quickly.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. No, thank you. What I wanted to say is that, in all, the speech has that historical inciting. It's an all-rounded one, full circle. It raised contemporary, very burning contemporary issues, realities in the continent, and it has also projected a way forward, how we can solve it. So it's a full circle. It just didn't talk about, this is my proposal. So we are standing on that strong ground of what our ancestors have laid on.
Absolutely.
And this is our reality, whether you like it or not. And if we do not do this ABC, there's no way out. Whether to be practical, whether it's a sweet talk or whatever, we're just taking it for the words. And we need to be able, it's not something that, to bash it, whether it's going to be practical or not, but we as an African take that ownership and, then make accountable our leaders. This is what you said. Where is it? And, create that consciousness, make it just live in the air for our people. Just talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. So people have to, when they turn the radio, that's something they should listen. When they open that device in their palm, that is something that they should see. So just talk about it, even if it's just this little YouTube channel or whatever, or Clubhouse, but talk about, then, as you said, then there is a consciousness, definitely. If it wasn't that, for that consciousness, I don't think we will be able to get that support, to rally behind Ethiopia's cause. So we should continue, if not for us, we should do it for the next generation, so they will grow up in that consciousness. The air should smell, we should breathe, we should eat that consciousness of African consciousness. So that being said, I think Sister Choice, she had a problem with her device, as she informed me. But thank you very much, Kwame Gonza, and for coming out, which I forgot to say, for reminding me, and kind of giving a heads up we should be able to talk about this. Let's read it between the lines. This is not just something we admire and then leave it and give it a like
Yes.
and then
Yes.
pass it, but we should talk about it, which is what we did. And before anyone, because no good thing is going to be promoted by international media, as we said, as you said, or everybody knows, we should take that narrative and talk about it. It was a good thing. It was a Pan-African speech. Now it's up to us also to live, up to it.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. I forgot to mention. Let me just mention one more thing. Actually, to add on what you said, that it was a Pan-African speech. In that speech, if you examine it, the word Africa, Pan-African, and African, it was mentioned in that speech about 33 times, more than 33 times, and the word Ethiopia or Ethiopian, it was mentioned less than 10 times, about 9 times. So you can see the outlook, the prime minister was having. And this is not because he was speaking to the African Union, but this is how Pan-Africanists speak. And this is how someone who has the continent very dear to his heart, speaks and understands. And from the beginning, he showed that Africa has to solve its problems.
Yeah.
It has to. We will not go out there. So all the history, when you look at all the history, how he has been moving, that is the direction in which he has moving. So it is no surprise for me. It is not surprise. So, but rather it filled me with a lot of joy and pride within my heart to read this speech, that it went on to confirm that this man, what he has been doing all the way through, it has led to this. This is what it has, it has led to. So we are living in interesting times. We are living in historical times today. And I think we need to embrace the times we are living in. We are living in times when the West is declining and China is rising, and the West is trying to fight very hard to stay on so that it can stay, exploiting the African continent. So Africa needs to form strategic alliances across the across the world. We are talking about Russia. We are talking about China. We could form strategic alliances with the countries like Iran, Russia, China, so that we can fight off this incursion. The United States is on our throat, is on our case. The West is on our case. So if we do not throw it off, we cannot reconstruct our continent. So it is the work of Pan-Africanists to mobilize the critical mass of our people, to mobilize the critical intellectual power and intellectual resources of our people within, and the material resources, to bring the idea of a united Africa to reality. And then in addition to that, form the strategic alliance. So strategic alliance, the critical mass of our people, and then the intellectual Pan-African resources. So those three things are the ones which will bring about a united Africa, which we want, for us to build the Africa we want. It is not the generation that is sitting right now in presidencies that is going to bring about this. So we have to understand that it is our responsibility for us to work towards that, especially the Pan-African world and the Pan-African organizations. So I thank you very much, Malet, for inviting me to share onto these platforms. And then to reflect on how powerful the Prime Minister Abiy's speech was today. I believe is very few presidents who will be able to give a speech as powerful as that we will even spend more than almost 3 hours on it, trying to dissect it, to try to understand. And yet it was a 14-minute speech, so it was just packed with a lot of important information. So it shows you how important this speech was. So I want to thank you. I want to thank Connect Africa. And once again, I want to reiterate that those who have not subscribed, they should come in and subscribe to the channel so that we can also be encouraged. And then as you subscribe and like, this information and our narrative that we are building as African will be suggested to other people. As you know, YouTube works with algorithms. So the more you like, the more you share, then the video will start popping up to other Africans so that they can understand what is going on in this African continent and our African people all around the world as we shape our narrative. So I want to thank you once again, Malet and Connect Africa.
Thank you very much. I don't know if I'm shying away or I forget. I am just concerned about the topic, but thank you really. When you say you are inviting me, this is our platform. Just being Pan-African is what made us to meet, online, and look at us now. We have been talking about different African issues, for long, which is really indeed great. And you are not a guest here. You are a partner of this media platform. But for those of you who don't know, actually, Kwame Gonza, he's a staunch Pan-Africanist, and he has his own YouTube called Africa Reimagined. I'm going to put the link in the description, where he gives solo analysis of different things. They're just 10-12 minutes most of the time, but very, very powerful. Sometimes he talk about it there, but then when we want to talk about it for between 2-3 people, he comes here, and he's always that person who is there to share his view as far as it's a Pan-African agenda or platform. Thank you, Kwame. We will meet again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for those of you who rooted for us and who have been here listening. Thank you.